Hi. I just want to talk a little bit about how you create computer characters for games. Specifically, how you do today with for PC, Xbox 360, and the PlayStation. Today, it's very similar techniques you use across those platforms for any AAA titles today. So I'm just going to touch on a few of those topics. And I'll start out by talking a little bit about the Hitman game that I've been working on. I've been a lead character artist on Hitman 5, which is the next one coming out. It's not done yet, so I'm only showing a little bit, and then I'll talk about a more general example on how you create a single character for a game. Take the next slide. Alright, for Hitman games, I don't know if you know this, but it's a very unique game in the sense that there's a lot of characters in the game, and as the main player character, you can actually take the clothes of any other characters in the game. So you have a game that has potentially hundreds of hero characters, whereas most other games you have one main character. So as a character artist, you have to focus on making one really good one and then some other ones to play against. But for the Hitman game, you have to create hundreds basically. So it's a very big challenge, and obviously usually be having a small team. For the most part, creating this game, we've created hundreds of characters with just 2-3 guys working full time. Out here in the right, you'll see a screenshot from the game, but basically, you have to develop a really tight pipeline. There's a lot of focus on trying to produce stuff at a really high quality very fast. Can you take the next slide, please? Just one more screenshot. This is in-game from the next Hitman Absolution coming up. And basically just, this is what I do, building these characters and making sure they can actually run inside a game at a very nice frame rate, very optimized. Next one, please. Today I'm just going to go through how I created this character. This is just something that is created for demonstration purposes. So this is not actually in any games at all. So I'm going to show you how I created this. This is a real-time render of the character, or a picture of it, running with DirectX 9. So this is something that would run on PlayStation, Xbox, very easy. Next one. So the first thing we need to do before we can establish and how to build a character, we need to go through and find out about the end result. We need to create maybe hundreds of characters. This can have a huge impact on the whole workflow. So we need to establish the visual quality you want to reach. We want to know about all the platform restrictions we have. Some things you can do on one platform you cannot do on another. Are we going to release on all the platforms? There's a lot of technology out there and it keeps changing. Do you need something new for your game? Maybe somebody already did it. Maybe you have to develop new technologies to achieve the goals you set up. Then you need to have established a very tight pipeline. You cannot waste any time. You need to make this as cheap and fast as possible. So this can often affect how you build a character. So quite often you'll make the first 10 characters, and then you realize there's a better way of doing it, and then you have to go back and change all the work you've already done. So when you make games, you spend a lot of time in pre-production, planning it out before you start making anything at all. To start off with the character, we just need a great concept. Usually when you work in a big games company, concept art is just given to the artist, i.e. me, and I'll start drawing. What's important for me is to have an idea of the personality of the character. I need to know a little bit about the background, and then it's of course very important to have established the style, so that not just me, but the other character artists on the team are able to create something that all looks like it exists in the same universe. So if we go back to this character I showed you before that we want to create, to actually start building it, what I would do is go in and start collecting a lot of reference. Usually you have an idea what a helmet looks like, or a pair of pants, but do you really know all the details? Do you really know how it reacts in the light? Do you know how it folds when they move and all this kind of stuff? Probably not, or at least it's very easy if you start researching. What I usually do is take pictures, search the internet, find everything I can about these different items, and then I start carefully modeling the pieces I need for the character, just in a basic shape where I have the the main details in there. The seams, anything that I find that I want to make sure stays in there throughout the whole process. Next one. Then I start to build a basic shape of the character. I want to just get a feel for the proportions. I want to make sure the whole thing feels real. And it all like becomes one with the, we need to get the anatomy in there. We need to make sure that the proportions are right. And then I start fleshing out details. This is done in ZBrush. These are the programs you can do this with. Basically, you just sit, and it's almost like sculpting with clay in 3D. So you just start adding as much detail as you can. Next one. And so I end up with something like this. Now this is not a game character. This is a high-res model. This has millions of polygons. It will never run in a game. I've painted some color in here, but I'll get back to that. So basically this has all the information I need, but I cannot use that in the game. So the next process will be to create the in-game geometry. This is the actual geometry that we'll see in the game, the stuff that the character will actually play. So the important part here is, of course, to make something that is very efficient, so it has to have as few polygons as possible, but at the same time reach that level of quality you want to portray. Basically, you want this to look like it's the really high-res one without being it. There's a few rules. Of course, you need to make sure that the character can actually move. So you need to have a certain amount of geometry around the mouth, in the armpits, all these places where you need some kind of deformation. And aside from that, you want to try and at least keep the silhouette to be as smooth and rounded as possible. Otherwise, it very easily becomes very jagged and very computer graphics, which you probably know if you play games. You'll see these very kind of square characters. So you want to try to avoid that. Then you need to map out the geometry. In order to actually give him color, paint some details in there, each polygon needs to know where it is in relation in 2D space. So we need to map out all the details. And this has to be done very efficiently. So I don't know how clearly it comes through, but this is his entire vest and shirt mapped out with all the different components. And once that's done, we can actually start taking some of that information that comes from the high-res character we made and put it into the low-res one. You want to put the next one? So here's an example. So I showed you before, I painted in some details on the high-res. So what I can do now is take the low-res mesh and put those two together, and then I can project the details from the high one onto the low one. Project it into 2D maps, basically. And here's the main important one is creating a normal map, but also here we can project some details. We can project some shadows, some ambient occlusion, and some details that will just become a good basis for us to start painting something. Next one. So we generate a normal map. A normal map is, just to briefly touch on it, this map you'll never actually see drawn directly in the game, but this map saves all the details of the high-res character into a texture that we can then put on the low-res character, and it's split up in 3 channels, and each channel controls a direction of light. So when the character in the game is hit by a light source, it will then draw these details in relation to the light. It's a little hard to explain, but I'll show you a little clearer example of it, how it works. But we'll generate that, and then we'll generate, for example, here, some more maps that we can start combining and create the actual end result for the game. Next one. So here is an example of the finished textures for the shirt and the vest. And here you have the diffuse, it's just the colors. Maybe you paint in a little bit of shadow. You'll have the normal map, which is generated with all the details we want. This is almost untouched afterwards. This is not something I paint a lot of details on afterwards. This is purely generated between the low-res and the high-res. And in the end, we'll do a specular map. This would probably start out from the diffuse map here, texture map, and then I'll create a grayscaled, maybe with a little bit of color. And this simulates how much light reflects back off the surface when the character is hit by some light in the game. So here's an example. This is the vest of the character without any type of textures on it. It's just a very simple shading. It's hit by some simple lighting. And it kind of looks a little bit flat. You can tell it doesn't have a lot of details compared to the high-res one at least. The next one here, I've added the specular map actually. So now you can start to see that some areas reflect more light, and you start to get a feel for the different fabrics it's made of. Next one. And then now, here, I've put on the normal map. As you see, it doesn't get the weird blue colors, but this actually just tells the lighting on each pixel how it's supposed to bounce back. So now you can really get a feel for all the details that I modeled into the high-res one are now somehow in this low end. If you try to go back again one. This is the same mesh. You go back again. And here it is with just that texture on it. So it's still super fast and renders really fast in the game, but now we have some more details. And in the end, we add the colors. So this is kind of the steps you'll have to go through for each component of the character. After that's done, you want to try and make sure he can move. Some character studios will have, or game studios, will have animators and riggers to do this specifically, but a lot of cases the character artists do this job too. And basically you will have some sort of skeleton that you need to map. Each point the character is made of has to be told which bone it belongs to. Usually you'll have somewhere between 2 and 4 bones to control each point in the character. So this is a kind of a time-consuming process as well, where you have to sit and map all this out to make sure it moves really well. And small mistakes here are really quite clear usually. So this is quite important part of the job. After that, when the character is built and he's skinned and he's all ready to move in the game, we need to optimize him too. The main character, he'll have like 10,000 polygons, maybe close up. That's a waste when he's far away from the camera in the game. So what we usually do, we'll actually build or rebuild the character 2 more times or more. That's what we replaced. So we'll start reducing. So here would be like the next step. So when the character is 10 meters away from the camera in the game, you'll reduce to this model. Obviously, imagine it's the whole character, all the parts. And then when he's 20 meters away, 100 meters away, you'll swap to a really simple version of the character. Make sure you keep a high performance. So this is a video. So there should be a play button somewhere. Anyways, this is the final result. This is the character being rendered real time, supposedly, if the video plays. When you have some play buttons. Different types of PowerPoint versions, I guess. But basically, this is the end result. And you can go on my website later and see all these videos. It's all there, more detailed explanations as well. So basically, this is what you end up with. This is the 10,000 polygons, something like that. A couple of texture maps, and hopefully it looks a little bit like there's a lot more detail in there than actually. No, it's fine. Just go to the last one. Basically, that's it. And you just do that 200 more times and you're done with the game. Yeah, as I said, there's a lot more stuff on my website. I keep making tutorials about this kind of stuff. And later, when the Hitman game is done, I'll be able to talk a lot more about that too. All right, thank you.